I was born and raised in Israel, and I have close family there, including 2 nieces who are currently serving in the Israeli Defense Forces. When Iranian-backed terrorists fire rockets on Israeli neighborhoods, that's my family they're targeting. That's my sister and my 75-year-old father and my 13-year-old nephew whose bar mitzvah we just attended last summer. And for many of you here today, it's your families too. ולישראלים שנמצאים כאן תודה מיוחדת שבאתם, אנחנו איתכם ועם משפחותיכם בשעה קשה זו. Israel didn't want this conflict, and Israel didn't start it. Israel wants peace and has been working toward a 2-state solution. As you heard from Ishmael, Israel made painful sacrifices and has taken risks for peace. In 2005, Israel ended its occupation of Gaza, voluntarily removing over 8,000 settlers. They abandoned homes, schools, businesses, and places of worship in hopes of renewing the peace process. There is no occupation in Gaza because there is no Jewish presence there. But the withdrawal from Gaza didn't turn out the way we had hoped. Leaving Gaza was not good enough for the terrorists. They want to destroy Israel. Make no mistake about it, this war is not about occupation, it is not about settlements, it is not about a Palestinian state. This is a proxy war for Iran, and like so many wars we've faced before, this war with Hamas is about Israel's right to exist. We thought we were beginning a new chapter in Israel's history, a peaceful chapter. But instead of peace, we got rockets raining on Israeli neighborhoods, as you just saw on the video. Instead of peace, we have children huddled in bomb shelters, unable to go to school or go out and play. Instead of peace, we have the shrill sounds of sirens and seconds to get to safety before a bomb hits. Again and again and again. Hamas, the Iran-backed terrorist regime ruling Gaza, has fired more than 6,000 rockets towards Israel since the 2005 withdrawal. These rockets are aimed at homes and schools, at living rooms and kindergartens, playgrounds and businesses, supermarkets and gas stations. Over 300 rockets were fired from Gaza in 1 week. As many as 150 rockets have landed in a single day. Israelis have been killed by these rockets, and hundreds more were wounded. As you saw, hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children are terrorized by the repeated code red alarms, giving them only seconds to find shelter. As a parent, I can only imagine the pain of that mother who has to choose which of her young children to grab as she runs for cover. Families have been facing these attacks not for a few hours or days or weeks, but for 3 years. In 2008, we had a few months of relative calm, the Egyptian-mediated truce. But then the Hamas terrorists showed us again what they really stand for and who they really are. They resumed their daily shelling of Israel, this time with longer-range Iranian-made weapons. This time, when they started up their daily bombings, they placed almost 1 million Israelis within rocket range. Israel had to respond to these attacks. No government can stand idly by while its citizens come under continued rocket and mortar fire. Self-defense is not only an inherent right, it is the obligation of any state to its citizens. In the Charter of the United Nations and remains a cornerstone of international law. And yet, Israel is now being criticized for its self-defense. It was attacked on its own soil. Imagine if thousands of rockets were fired from Canada into homes in Washington state, every day and every night. What would the United States do? What would you expect your government to do? While most of the Palestinian casualties have been Hamas terrorists, we know that civilians on both sides of this conflict have been hurt. The Israel Defense Forces do everything they can to prevent Palestinian casualties. There have been a few mistakes, but most of the strikes have been carried out with pinpoint accuracy. The IDF uses surgical strikes targeting Hamas terrorists and the terrorist infrastructure, rocket launchers, munitions stores, and smuggling tunnels. What other country sends advance notice of bombings? What country puts its own soldiers at greater risk in order to minimize civilian casualties on the other side? Nevertheless, we know that innocents inevitably will lose their lives on both sides, and we deeply mourn these losses. In this conflict is intentionally targeting civilians. The Hamas terrorists deliberately fire into Israeli neighborhoods. Hamas terrorists even place their own civilians at risk, placing rocket launchers in schools, bomb factories in mosques, and tunnels under homes. Yes, civilians have been hurt, despite Israel's best efforts. But that's because the Hamas terrorists hide among civilians and use them as human shields. That's a violation of both international law and all common morality. Hamas terrorists are responsible for Palestinian civilian casualties as well as Israeli ones. And perversely, Hamas celebrates the harm both to Israelis and to their own martyrs, the Palestinian women and children and elderly, whom they intentionally put in harm's way. The death of a Palestinian child is no less a tragedy than that of an Israeli one. I know that the vast majority of both Palestinians and Israelis want an end to this conflict. As a parent, I know that we all want a better, more peaceful future for our children. But when will the Iran-backed terrorists stop firing rockets from Gaza into Israel? When will Hamas stop using civilian areas as launching grounds? As you've heard, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is challenging. Israel is trying to mitigate the effects on Palestinian civilians. At the same time that it carries out military actions against the Hamas terrorist infrastructure, Israel continues to facilitate hundreds of trucks carrying humanitarian relief supplies into Gaza. Israel has transferred thousands of tons of food and medicine to the Palestinians. The current situation is difficult, but we are hopeful for a better future. The weakening of Hamas in Gaza could lead to an opening to expand Israeli-Palestinian cooperation toward a durable and sustainable peace. Israel wants the pain and suffering to end. It is committed to working with the Palestinians toward a peaceful diplomatic solutions where both sides can live side by side in peace and security. You can help, and here's how. Write to the people of Israel and to the soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces as they fight to defend and protect Israel. Write them notes of encouragement, support, and solidarity. You can even volunteer on an IDF non-combat base in Israel. Most importantly, speak up in support of Israel's right to defend itself and its quest for peace. Call into radio talk shows, write letters to the editor, update your Facebook status, write to your elected officials and thank them for their support. Talk to your friends and your neighbor and the person behind you in the supermarket checkout line. Tell them that Israel is defending itself from rocket attacks. Tell them that Israel does all it can to protect civilians on both sides. And most of all, tell them that Israel wants peace.